The family point of view when it comes to the beginning and the fame for Heart. We talked to four who were there in the integral 70s version of Heart. Guitarist Roger Fisher, who was the lead guitarist of Heart, manager Mike Fisher, bassist Steve Fossen, and drummer Michael DeRozier. Their family's reaction to them getting into music and once they got big. Heart on Rock History Music. When did you know there was something in the music? You know, a lot of people pick up instruments. Everyone does. It's like a hockey player in Canada. Everyone plays hockey. But there's a point where, and I've talked to hockey players where they went, oh, wait a minute, I got something here. Nurture and nature, whatever it is, I can do something with this. What about both of you guys? When did you know that?
Jeez. Instantly, immediately, when we were kids.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of your father...
I mean,
no, go ahead.
When I discovered that we could build a tree house with our own hands and tools and stuff, that was really empowering. And something else that was really empowering was our family built our own house. And so we learned recycling. We would, on a hot summer day, we'd be out in the yard with a big stack of used lumber, and we'd be taking the nails out and then straightening the nails. So we would use that lumber and those nails over again, and that's how we built our house. So that was a really great lesson.
Your parents and Roger's parents, were they cool with everything? You guys doing this?
Well, yeah.
They didn't want you to be a lawyer?
Oh, my dad said, hey, so here's what happened. I was listening to Beatle albums all the time, and all I could talk about was Paul McCartney and the bass. So my dad finally said, Steve, got me in the car. We're driving to the music store. We're going to rent you a bass. He was tired of hearing about it. And I'm sure in his mind, he thought, he'll rent the bass, he'll get it home. It'll be too hard. He'll lose interest, and then it'll be over, and then he'll get a real job. But of course, that didn't happen. I mean, the bass that we rented you couldn't get it out of my hands, basically. And all I wanted to do was learn more, learn. And this, and just so happened that it was a nice bass, had a nice sound, and then we rented this nice little tube amp, it was Supro, and it sounded really good. And I don't know, it just something about bass and the way they look and the way they sound just mesmerized my whole life. So
what was the reaction when you guys were like one of the biggest? I always say this, they laugh at me when I say they were the biggest band in the land. I just said that on my radio show last night. Some guy called up and he says, what? No one says that. But how did your parents react when things got big?
Well, like I said, my dad was in the beginning was going like, he was throwing his hands up like, when are you going to stop this dragging yourself around and get a real job? But anyway, so when we finally made it, we had, Dreamboat Annie was out. It was in America. It was selling really well. And we came home from a leg of the tour, and they dropped me off at my dad's house because that's where I left my truck to in a limo. And Dad was out there. What's what's going on? And then a couple months later, we were touring Europe with Nazareth, and there his son is standing in front of the Eiffel Tower with the rest of the band on a tour of Europe. And we're, in the Seattle Times newspaper. And so he kind of figured then that was, things were going well.
And the family reacted like, I'm always curious because, when something like that happens, there's a ripple effect to having like a rock star in the family. I mean, it's kind of a cool thing. It's sometimes the first thing a sister would say when she's walking in the room. So what was that like? Did they feel it too?
Oh, they were super proud. Dad was super proud. And he spent a lot of time finding articles and clipping them out and he made a really nice scrapbook for me, from him to me, that I only discovered after he had died, basically.
Wow.
And so he was, obviously proud. And then the neighbors would say, "Oh, your dad was so proud of you." And he, but before that, it was different because he was in real estate. And so he would meet every morning at the little local spot to have breakfast, and they would, drink their coffee and eat their eggs and talk. And so he was with builders and developers and other real estate agents, and they would all say, "Oh yeah, my son, he just enrolled in college. He's going to the U." And then, "Oh, my son just got married and they bought a house." And "Oh, my other son, he's just got enrolled in the, Harvard," or whatever, And all Dad could say all those years was, "Well, Steve's still out there playing music with Roger," and so he was. And
yeah, but later,
long hair too,
Oh yeah, yeah, but later he.
Yeah. So I was getting to that. So when we made it big, it was like Dad was, he was king of the breakfast table then. Because all you heard back when we first cracked in Seattle, Heart was on the radio all the time. They talked about Heart all the time. They talked about what we were doing, and it was great. It was fantastic. And of course, I hate to say this, but my dad, he had like a gigantic plate of crow. He had to. I hear that crow doesn't taste that good. I don't know.
What was the reaction? I mean, we know how it feels here. We have to put a barn door on this thing to quiet down the noise since we moved here last August, because the noise this is a big room, right? And but how did the drumming thing happen for you, and how did your parents react to drumming and fame that you received?
Well, the fame part of it, becoming a drummer.
Yeah. And then the fame that came after, because what were your friends telling you? You were in Heart, you were in one of the biggest bands around.
Well, my mom got me started playing when I was about 12, and so as I got more and more into it, my mom and dad, they would just be in the family room, close the door, turn the TV up, and I'd just play. I started with a Sonar set, smaller drums, so they weren't as nasty. They weren't as loud. I got a Ludwig set that was bigger and much more full, no padding or anything. I used to practice in my bedroom, and I'm sure the neighbors could hear me easily. Any neighbor, on any side of us, they could hear us. I'm sure, hear me playing, and nobody ever seemed to. They just really were cool about letting me just do my thing.
And when the fame came, how did your friends and family react to that? I'm just kind of curious.
My mom was more. She was very proud, but she was more kind of subtle about it. My dad, he was retired, so he'd go out to McDonald's and have coffee with 3 or 4 buddies, and he was always hyping me up, pumping me up, and to them. And I'd go somewhere. I'd go to the car dealership or something where he had been, and the guys were telling me, "Oh yeah, your dad was telling us that you were in Heart." At the bank, it didn't matter where. Yeah, somebody would tell me that my dad had been there and was talking about, "Oh yeah, your dad came in there and was talking."
Well, okay.
When things got really big for you guys, were your parents still around? I mean, were you able to come home and say, "Hey, Mom and Dad, look what we built,"
Yeah, I know. They were pretty blown away. I remember we gave them a limo ride from Seattle to Vancouver to attend a show that we did. It was the biggest show in Canada's history at the time, when we played at the PNE. Empire Stadium, yeah. And boy, were they ever proud.
As we've said with every one of these clips, we tried to get an interview with Ann Wilson. And we always seem to get an excuse that she wouldn't come on the channel. I hope this is not the case, but I've interviewed Roger and Mike Fisher before, and I hope by doing so didn't put me on the naughty list, but this is the most runaround I've ever had trying to get an interview with someone. And I've been in radio 40 years. Ann Wilson's always welcome. She's one of my favorite singers of all time to come on this channel and talk and give us her point of view. Nancy as well. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music.